That's awkward. I'm just going to carry this. All right, everybody, welcome to Sun River Nature Center's Twilight Talks. The first one we are starting with in 2025 is a little intro into wildlife in human care, because obviously that's a very large focus of the Sun River Nature Center and Observatory. And it's been, a very interesting transition for wildlife in human care over the last few decades especially, but even more so over the centuries. So we're going to look at that and what we do here at the Nature Center. This is going to be presented by 3 different presenters. So we'll start with introducing ourselves. My name is Kelly Newman. I'm the Wildlife Conservation Manager here. And I've been active in the conservation world for about 30 years. I have a degree in biology from the University of Montana. I've been here at the Sun River Nature Center for about 5 years, so helped with a lot of the transition that we've been going through over the years. And I also have a couple of training certifications, gone to school for dog training and owned a dog training business, as well as involved in a lot of the wildlife training in the industry stuff as well. So that is a little bit about me. And the next person we will introduce is Victoria here. Yes, there you are.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Victoria Wilson. I'm a wildlife curator here at SNCO. I got my start at Cascades Raptor Center over in Eugene. I started as a volunteer there and volunteered a lot of hours, over 3,500 hours in 2 years before I was hired as staff, and then was on staff there in their wildlife hospital and with their education team for 4 years before coming here. And now I manage our collection here, and I've been here for about 1.5 years.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lucas Pecci. I'm a wildlife care specialist here. I'm originally from the great state of Iowa, and I attended Iowa State and got a degree in animal ecology there. And then since then, I've been a biological field technician for 2 years, mostly in the Midwest, and then I moved out here to Oregon. And throughout that time, I volunteered at plenty of animal hospitals and rehabilitation centers throughout the area as well. And I've been here at the Nature Center for about 2.5 months.
Yes, it's a big team. I will tell you, this is a passion project, and we're always trying to do the best we can. And definitely having a dedicated team is a huge part of it. So it's a never-ending job. You don't get vacations, you don't get days off. You're always thinking about it. And so having the team that is there is really crucial to what we do here. So just to start out, I'm going to go over a brief history of how wildlife in human care has changed over the centuries. So it's amazing. Basically, as long as we've had civilization, so basically around the dawn of written word, when we started moving into cities as agriculture and kind of organizing as communities, we also had these kind of like zoological parks or places that were designated to keeping wildlife or other animals besides our agricultural animals. So as far back as 3,500, so that's about 5,000 years ago, there are actual records of our civilizations keeping wildlife. So the oldest known collection was by one of the first queens of Egypt. And a lot of these parks that they had were kind of like a status symbol, kind of like an image of wealth and privilege. But it was also just like a kind of a fascination. Obviously, we don't have a whole lot of records from back then. So a lot of what we do have are just images or archaeological sites. And one of the most interesting things about this older one is that they mummified a lot of the animals that they had in their care at that time. So clearly there was a lot of reverence for these animals. And it went on throughout the world, as civilization progressed and grew up in different areas, you see different types of wildlife collections within bustling cities, and animals that weren't from the native landscape being imported in, as a status symbol potentially, or just out of general interest. So these are some of the archaeological sites that they have throughout the years. You can see in Egypt, areas that is now Pakistan. And then of course, the rise of the Romans is when it started to get a little bit dark. And we moved our interest for wildlife into a little bit more of the gladiator stage. So that's when the Romans were importing. So when they were at war with other cultures, they would see these really cool animals, bring them back, and then eventually threw them into the pits to fight in the Colosseums. And that was thousands. Like the records of things that they have excavated and from that arena are thousands of animals, tigers, lions, elephants, bears. And a lot of times they had to train these animals to be aggressive. So the idea in the Roman era, as far as we know, is the more powerful the animal, the more of a status symbol it was. So big cats, bears, that kind of stuff were really popular. But there's not any animals out there that are just super willing to be aggressive just for the sake of being aggressive. So they had to actually train these animals in order to participate in the aggressive sports that they were trying to get them to do it. So they had like designated areas where they would either chain the animals together or starve them or do whatever it took to get them to fight. And that went on for about 1,000 years. And then the games were shut down about 500 Common Era. Interesting, in Persia and the Arab Empire, they also had animal collections, even though that region wasn't really well known for their scientific interest. And then of course, during the Middle Ages, they also had really prestigious, what were known as menageries. So King Louis, Versailles had a huge animal collection. And those were really just kind of like probably a way to show off your wealth and power. Like, I can have a giraffe. Like that's kind of cool, I guess. But also it just kind of indicates that like over thousands of years, people have had this fascination with wildlife and they wanted to go to places where they could observe them. So these are kind of some fun photos from past zoological areas. We have the traditional, what you think of in the early 1800s and prior to that, menageries where it's just an animal in a cage. But a lot of them from the more ancient civilizations, you can see like they were more like botanical gardens. So they were kind of trying to create, and a lot of the words that they used to reference these areas were like paradise or gardens. So they were really trying to create a space where people could go and experience nature as soon as we started developing cities. So that's kind of cool. And of course, this one, oh, makes me so sad. The last Tasmanian tiger in captivity. And, if we had the zoological systems we have today, probably wouldn't have been the last. So that's where we started moving into in the last century. So around the 16 to 1800s, it's known as the Enlightenment period in Europe, excuse me. And that's kind of when people started thinking more about like, how do we observe these things in a way that's beneficial to them? And the oldest existing zoo was founded. And it's also when we started bringing more public into the zoos. So prior to that, it was really just kind of like a backyard menagerie for people that had wealth and privilege, and it was a way to show your status, right? So if you owned a tiger, you have a lot of money because you could feed it, you could import it, all those things. And then starting in the 18 and 1900s, we started to bring in the public and allow them to experience the wildlife and the kind of magic as well. So these 1800s and 1900s were some of the first technical zoos where people were allowed to come. And then we really started making progress on the animal welfare side of things about 100 years ago or so. A big one was this Hagenbeck revolution, where instead of the traditional bars, he created moats and really opened up enclosures to make it more naturalistic. And I will say, we don't really know in the past, like what kind of areas these were kept in. And I would imagine, just due to lack of written records and stuff, the fact that they had dedicated staff to those animals, they might have taken better care of them. It really kind of went with whoever's attitude at the time was a ruler. So It definitely might not have been in the last 100 years that we've only focused on animal welfare, but we definitely have more records of that. So we definitely started changing things within the last 100 years. And where we're at now as kind of a global animal welfare society is really taking a close look at conservation and realizing that in a lot of cases, these wildlife and wild spaces are starting to disappear. So the zoos have become places, kind of like last bastions of places where you can see them, you can kind of see what their habitat looked like, and hopefully develop kind of a care about what's going to happen to everything in the long run. So these are some pictures of our more modern zoological parks. And you can also see that the composition of animals has become more of those that are endangered or vulnerable. Up there's a 60-ish% or 70%. But you get like these big open spaces, natural looking enclosures, and overall just more focus on the individual animal and how well they're doing. We've also standardized our practices. So there's the worldwide zoological association and a lot of more rules and regulations in place that everybody has to follow. The larger enclosure sizes are pretty much the standard now. There's not a lot of places you can go to that are just, you know, an animal in a box. And we do a lot more enrichment with the animals. So things that are trying to recreate their natural habitat so that we can observe the natural tendencies that they have in the wild. Avoiding stereotypical behaviors. Stereotypical behaviors are things like pacing, which if you guys have ever been to old zoos, you'll see a lot of them just walking back and forth. And so they try to get that out of the areas. And we like to see animals who are playing or interacting with other animals in their enclosure, you know, not kept alone in a single cage. There's also a ton of regulation now on zoos and places like the Nature Center. So here we've got ODFW, Oregon Fish and Wildlife, the US Fish and Wildlife, the US Department of Agriculture, the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and then the more broad categories like AZA, Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and that kind of thing, that we all kind of follow standardized systems. And a big one that we'll talk a little bit more about is integrating free choice into these animals' lives. So one of the biggest rewards we can give them is autonomy. So choosing whether or not they participate in things. And that has changed a lot in the training methods that we use. So again, the last century has really been a huge change and shift in the way that we look at animals, as opposed to more of like the dominance and coercion, or like kind of forced behaviors where you're tying something down, you're threatening it, or threatening it with negative consequences for not performing an action or in order to perform an action. We've switched to the more classical conditioning, operant conditioning, where positive behaviors are paired with positive outcomes. And so that gives the animal the choice of whether or not they want to do something, and then a positive outcome if they do. So if you're familiar, I could totally go into the weeds about this, but I'll just kind of say that the last 100 years or so, actually 70 years, they really have been able to focus in a little bit more on behavior, what makes all biological life tick, and what will increase the likelihood that a behavior will occur and decrease the likelihood that a behavior will occur. Because a lot of the reasons that these coercive methods were used in the past is because they are very effective. You know, if you hit something enough times, it's going to stop doing that thing, usually. But if you provide positive reinforcement, it's usually a much more effective, much less damaging process for the animal. So operant conditioning has become very standard practice in most settings. And it continues to show that it's really the most effective tool that we have. Some of the leading pioneers in this, one of the big ones was chicken class. So this is something that using these methods, people started to learn that you could convince animals to do things that you couldn't do otherwise with the old methods. So you can't really train a hamster to swing on a trapeze using the more adversive techniques. A lot of times, in order to learn these operant conditioning techniques, they'll do something called chicken class. It's a really fun way to just take an animal that's never had any experience with anything and teach it things you would never guess a chicken could learn. Color differentiation, he could figure out, like, pick the 5 out. You could tell it to pick the green 5. They'll do mazes, like all sorts of things, just using positive reinforcement. And it takes a really short time for the animals to pick this up too. These are some of the people who really pioneered this work. A lot of them were like Karen Pryor, marine biologists and marine animal trainers. And that's kind of an arena in which those old techniques didn't work really well. And then another thing that's really become more prevalent in our animal welfare world these days is kind of thinking outside of the human mindset. So perception, and Dr. Temple Grandin was a really great pioneer in this area, where kind of like helping the industry realize that the world is seen differently through animal eyes, and what we can do to kind of make the world a easier place for animals to inhabit. Another really big movement now is, again, that perception part. They call it the Umwelt. If you guys have not heard of the book by Ed Young, Immense World, it's incredible. Highly recommend you pick it up. It's got a lot of examples of scientific studies on how different things perceive the world differently. So that brings us to here at Sun River Nature Center, how we utilize our wildlife in human care. And I will say that Sun River Nature Center has kind of been riding the wave of industry changes as it goes. So traditionally, what they started with when they founded the Nature Center here in the 60s was to rescue animals who had been injured or orphaned due to usually anthropogenic causes, and provide a lifelong place for them to stay. And so that's kind of the model that we started with, and it's still a model that sometimes is utilized today. But we also have a different understanding of how those animals feel in captivity and how they can be best utilized in order to accomplish the goal of allowing people to connect with wildlife. And Victoria is going to tell us more about that part of things.
All right. So the right animal for the job. Meeting people, being in close contact with strangers, working with trainers is a really hard thing for a wild animal to do. And so it's really important for us to be thinking about that and taking that into account as we are choosing which animals we want as ambassadors. Traditionally, as Kelly said, we used a lot of birds that came through the wildlife a wildlife hospital and were deemed non-releasable for one reason or another. And I'll go over some of our individual birds in a minute. Non-releasable birds tend to have more health issues because they are non-releasable for whatever reason. Maybe it's a broken wing that means they can't fly. They might have arthritis because of that fractured wing. Birds that are blind in one eye might have more difficulty navigating an enclosure. On the other hand, we have birds that are hatched in human care that grew up around people. When they're around people from that really young age, it's a very critical stage of development. And if they're exposed to lots of scary things during that stage of development, those things won't be scary. So we are able to do that with some of our ambassadors here, raise them around people and get them so they're super comfortable in all kinds of different situations. And one of our first examples of that is Luna, our Eurasian eagle owl. She is a 5-year-old, almost 5 years old, Eurasian eagle owl. They're the largest species of owl in the world. And she, again, hatched in human care and came to us when she was about a month old. She was able to be around all kinds of things, so now she can do all kinds of fun outreach stuff that we'll get to as well. But she can go to classrooms and libraries and all kinds of different events. She did an event last June that was 300 people outdoors, live music. She was super chill with the whole thing. She was given the option to say no every step of the way. That is a really important thing that we do with the birds, is that they always have the option to opt out of what we're asking them to do. And that means a really important part of my job as a trainer is being able to read that body language so that I know when they are uncomfortable and want to be removed from a situation. You might have seen her when you walked up. We also have Freya, a gyrfalcon. They're the largest species of falcon in the world. She is another one of our birds that hatched in human care, and she came to us when she was 9 days old, I think. Yeah, 9 days old. So she is also a rock star bird. She was super comfortable hanging out, meeting people. She free flies. She does all kinds of cool things to help us educate people about wildlife. We also have Stevie, who is an American barn owl. She also hatched in human care. So we have those 3 birds that all hatched in human care and are awesome ambassadors for their species. They can do this job without being stressed out. And we also have Ron. Ron's story is a little bit more interesting because he came into care at a very young age, but it was because he fell out of his nest as a very young bird and then was illegally kept by some people. So he was around people from a young age, but he wasn't intentionally raised the same way the previous 3 birds were raised and exposed to all kinds of different things. So he does tend to be a little bit more nervous about new situations. He doesn't have quite as much confidence. And the other thing that we see with him sometimes is that when he fell out of the nest, he broke his wing. And because he wasn't taken to a qualified rehabber, it did not heal very well. So he does sometimes get some discomfort from that wing. And that's something we're always watching for in our ambassadors, is whether they are not just happy, but also physically comfortable, so that we aren't causing them any kind of pain. His aviary is perched out specifically for him so that he can be comfortable and navigate that aviary. And our oldest resident is Joe, a great horned owl who originally came into care as an adult. So he grew up in the wild, was hit by a car and lost vision in his left eye. He is considered a legacy bird. So a legacy bird is one that came from the old times before we transitioned to choice-based training. So he has a history of coercive training where he was taken out and used for programs without being given the choice to say no. And so we see a lot more behavior with him that is not as comfortable around people. But again, it's always his choice to say no if he doesn't want to engage with the trainer. And he exercises that choice often, which is totally fine. But he is a great example of what you can do with the choice-based training and giving them opportunities to say yes or say no, because letting them say no builds trust with the bird. If they know that you're safe and you're not going to force them into a situation and they have the option to say no, they're a lot more likely to say yes to something. So you'll see some of those things with him in my videos. I think we have a couple other ambassadors up first. Oh yeah, our duck. So we have 5 ducks on our team as well. A northern pintail, 2 cinnamon teals, and 2 wood ducks. They all also hatched here and were raised around people. So they're very confident little ambassadors, a little bit too much sometimes. They have no sense of personal space. They love to try and untie your shoelaces. And we use the same training with them. They're crate trained. They know how to target to different places. They do a lot of fun stuff and help us teach kids they're a little bit more accessible for kids than some of the raptors are, that sometimes kids think the birds with the big talons are kind of scary, but the ducks, everybody loves the ducks. And then we also have some quail on our team. This is Thielsen, a mountain quail, and we have some California Valley quail as well. Thielsen, the mountain quail, is also crate trained and trained to go into a little hutch at night so that she's safe. And then additionally, we have our reptiles and amphibians on our team, which Lucas will talk about a little bit later. So some of the training that we do here with our ambassadors, one of the most foundational behaviors that we work on is crate training. And let's see and she's gonna go straight for her crate. So we train them to go into their crates for a number of reasons. It's a really useful behavior for them to know and be comfortable with. Circumstances, that would be if we had an emergency evacuation, we had the fires nearby, get very close this summer, and it was reassuring that we knew that our birds are comfortable going into those travel crates and sitting in them as long as we need them to so that we can evacuate them. But it's also useful for other reasons if we ever needed to go to the vet, or in some cases, if we're taking birds off-site to programs, they'll go into their crate, they hang out in their crate. You guys some pictures. Yeah, they'll hang out in their crate and do the program and go back and ride home, and they're super comfortable with that. This is a picture of Joe stepping into his crate because even though he is not the most comfortable bird, he still has become a lot more confident in the last year or so, and is doing a lot more participation in his training and working on that crate training. We also do voluntary equipment with the birds. So we don't have the old-fashioned style jesses that are always attached that you can go in and grab and make the bird step up onto your glove the way that things used to be. We use all removable equipment. So here's a video of Steve. She's got fully removable anklets. And then jesses would go through those grommets on the anklets, and then a leash attaches to that because we always use some kind of safety equipment anytime the birds are outside of their aviaries. Just in case something scary happens. It's not to force her to stay on the glove, but if some dog comes running up and jumps up at her, she's gonna want to get away from that. It's my job to keep her safe, not letting her fly away and get lost. And Joe's also working on his voluntary equipment and doing a great job with that. Although we aren't planning on using him for programs, it's a great thing for him to be able to come outside of his aviary safely if he wants to. So that's why we've been working on that with him. And then free flight is one of the fun behaviors we get to train. Free flight is one of the most difficult behaviors because you're letting that bird go and hoping that they come back. And it takes a lot of training to get them to that point where you can be comfortable letting them off of that leash. So here's Stevie again. She's not making an appearance tonight, but she was a great model for all of our videos. So free flight is like the ultimate form of choice and control. They could choose to leave at any point if they wanted to. They choose to come back because of all that training that we've done with them. They know that we are safety. We are an easy meal. A lot of it comes down to with raptors and birds of prey is that they know what's safe and where their food comes from, and they have that solid relationship built up with us. And that's Freya way up in the sky. So next one, oh yeah, outreach. So all of those behaviors let us do a lot of outreach with our wildlife. This is Luna at Lapine Library, who is teaching a group of kids about wildlife. You can see on the table behind her, we also have some biofacts that they were able to touch because the birds don't like to be touched, but kids love to touch things, and it's a great opportunity to get to see what they feel like by using those biofacts. And this is again where crate training came into play, voluntary equipment, all of those things. And she let us teach a bunch of kids. It was a really great situation for her, and she's done lots of programs like that. It's great being able to get out into the community with the birds and get them in front of people so that people can learn about them and make that connection. Being able to make a one-to-one connection and seeing a bird up close can inspire that caring about the environment that you might not otherwise get. I think, yeah, you're up.
Okay.
Oh, reptiles and amphibians.
Hiking me up.
Yeah. So look at this.
Man.
About a couple of our ambassador reptiles that we have on the team. That's very cool.
This flipped out, okay. All right, yeah, so I have a couple of ambassador reptiles to show you guys. I'll grab Lily really quick. Enjoy the pictures of her in the meantime. Yeah, you can measure. I don't know, I don't know. All right.
So do you win our old jack-o'-lanterns?
I think we had those pumpkins for a really long time. This is Lily. She's gonna be moving around quite a bit. Can the camera see her? I hope so. Okay, and then I'll talk a little bit about her. And Russian tortoises. She is a Russian tortoise, by the way, in general. So Russian tortoises are listed as vulnerable. They average 5 to 10 inches in diameter, with the females being bigger when they're 6 to 10 inches, while the males are only 5 to 8 inches. And this makes them sexually dimorphic. So sexual dimorphism is when the males and females are characteristically different. Um, and the very common ways that animals are sexually dimorphic is whether it's coloration. I don't know if you remember the wood ducks that Victoria was showing, but the male was very vibrant, very bright, very colorful, while the female was well, kind of dull. She's not around. She's okay if I say that. And so that's a common form of it. Also, size is very common. And then also, like, if you think about like deer with their antlers, those are sexually dimorphic because the males have antlers while the females don't. Um, and some more ways that Russian tortoises are sexually dimorphic is, besides size, is the males. So I'm going to show, sorry, Lily, I'm going to show everyone your tail. Her tail is very wide and goes straight down. Males, their tail is very long and thinner, and they usually keep it to the side. Um, and then also her claws, her nails are not as long as male nails. Um, I have a little Russian tortoise at home named Biscuit, so I can see the difference. When I first saw Lily, I was like, oh my gosh, she's massive. They can live up to around 50 years old, and they thrive in dry and open areas with soil that is they can easily burrow through. And their burrows can get as far down as 6.5 feet. So they can really go to work on that soil. And their diet consists of mixed greens, various vegetables, and sometimes fruit. So fruit for them gives them no nutrients. It's almost like candy for kids. So if you keep feeding them fruit, they won't get anything from it, but they'll love it a lot, and they'll only eat that fruit. So if you guys ever have a Russian tortoise in the future, make sure to give them fruit very rarely. And then a fun fact about them is 2 Russian tortoises circled the moon and returned in 1968. They're actually the first like live beings to ever circle the moon and come back to Earth ever, and it's 2 Russian tortoises. So they're pretty. I don't think Lily did it, but most of them know about it, I guess. I don't know. So some differences between turtles and tortoises is, first of all tortoises are turtles, but not all turtles are tortoises. That was a lot of T words. Hopefully you guys got that. It's kind of a tongue twister. But the first difference is their diet. So turtles are omnivores. They eat both invertebrates, insects, as well as vegetation, where tortoises are herbivores and they eat only vegetation. Secondly, their habitat is much different. Turtles like water. As you can see, sea turtles obviously love water, but even turtles on land really like a prominent water source. While tortoises like dry grasslands with a lot of dirt. And then another difference is their shell shape. So as you can see, the turtle up top has a very thin water dynamic shell shape to help them swim, whereas the tortoise has a large dome-shaped shell, so they can be protected from predators. Again, I hope that the camera is seeing Lily. And then lastly, their feet. So that's kind of, again, an extreme case up top is where a turtle has like full-on flippers. Most turtles on land, they don't have like full flippers, but they do have webbed feet that helps them swim. Whereas tortoises have long claws to help them dig. And then also their hind legs is considered elephantine, which means that they're thick and stubby, kind of. Again, sorry, Lily, this is nothing personal. And that helps them carry the weight of their shell and just their body in general because they don't have the water that helps them. So yeah. So the importance of tortoises. So tortoises, like I said, dig burrows, and those burrows in nature are used by a variety of animals, as what this kind of illustrates, and that makes multiple tortoise species keystone species. And keystone species are very important to their environment. They're basically species that multiple animals rely on and need, and if you take them out of that environment, those animals would struggle heavily. It just kind of means that they're very important. It's kind of like a badge of honor, I like to think. But so yeah, multiple tortoise species are keystone species because of their burrows. And then on top of that, they eat plenty of vegetation and then excrete the seeds in different areas, which promotes biodiversity in a lot of areas. And that is it for Lily. She did such a great job. Oh, perfect. I'll trade you. You got her all right? This is this is Toriel. Toriel, sorry. She is a rosy boa, and they are members of the Boidae family. Sorry. And the adults range from 17 to 44 inches, but in nature, really none of them get to that 44 inches. It's usually like 36 for the most part. And their habitat consists of rocky areas and shrublands. They are primarily nocturnal, except for basking in the sun. You were doing, can a camera? Pose for the camera a little bit. And they are live bearing, which means that they birth live babies. For the longest time, I thought that all snakes laid eggs, but that's only some snakes. When they're live bearing snakes, they fertilize the eggs inside, and then the babies come out alive. So that's kind of cool. What are you doing there? And the common female has around 13 to 14 young born between October and November. That's like their main months. Their diet consists of small vertebrates, and they live around 30 years. And their size and docility make them great pets. They're kind of like a nice in between of like a worm and a boa constrictor. You kind of gotta find your happy medium. It's just per person, but they are a good size for that. And so they, because of their climate, they are mostly native in Southwest America or Northwest Mexico. They are not usually found here in the PNW. But you can find boas here. You can find rubber boas. They're all over the place. We actually have a rubber boa in our creature cave inside if you guys want to check that out at some point. And so yeah, they're not found around here, but rubber boas are. Rubber boas are cool. And then a fun fact about rosy boas is they are the slowest snake species. They only go about a mile per hour when on the ground. Again, nothing personal. I feel like I've had some facts that just made them feel bad, but she seems fine. Just have to hit the treadmill a bit. But yeah, they're the slowest snake species. So if you see one around that you're afraid of, you don't have to run very fast if you want to get away. And that's all I got on her. So I'll go put her back. Thank you, everyone. I hope they're seeing it. Her, sorry. Rosy boa, everyone.
Okay, so our last little bit of the program, we're gonna bring out one of our wildlife ambassadors that we introduced you to, Luna, and just gonna demonstrate what we can accomplish with the free choice behavior and how we utilize her in programs to allow people to see the natural behaviors and connect with her, kind of on a one-on-one. That's not awkward. Experience. Victoria just went over and asked Luna to walk into her crate, which she has been trained to do. And then once Luna was in her crate, we brought the crate over here. And then now we will bring the crate into this area.
I don't think we can hear you online.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, online participants. I'm gonna leave this here for Victoria because she's got things to pin it on as well, and I'm gonna pin them. Yeah. And Nima doesn't have any equipment on right now. We're sitting voluntarily. And so programs for schools or libraries or whatnot, we always start by asking the audience to make sure that they keep their hands down. And if they have purses or anything, to just kind of stash those. Because she was raised with people, she's very comfortable. She doesn't have a really good personal space boundary. And Victoria's going to tell you more about her and her participation in programs and how well she's been coming along in her training.
Yeah, so Luna's doing all kinds of things. Like I said, she did a program back in June outdoors with some of her people. And she actually even flew at that program outside. She's comfortable enough, confident enough that she was comfortable in my glove. Sometimes the challenge with her is getting her to leave the glove. She wants to hang out here, but you know she gets all the good snacks.
Yeah, it's cool. She's a Eurasian eagle owl. So very similar to the great horned owls you'll find here in North America, but in an actual North American species. Obsessed with her own reflection. Look at that big beautiful owl over there. We're gonna dig it. So Victoria gives her a little cue, and then Linda decides whether or
Ellie,
not.
give me more snacks.
Yeah.
My feet go through the table.
Oh, she's looking at
She knows the fence view too, if you point at me. Or she's been working on it right here.
The thing about owls is they have super sensory organs, ginormous eyes, incredible hearing. So these kind of environments are really hard for them.
Well, it's gonna be on the table.
Alright, we're just giving everybody a personal.
To the elephant.
What snacks does she have?
Today she's having some rabbit and some chicken and some mouse, a little bit of everything.
Great way to demonstrate their ability for quite a bit. These are having dinner one. It's so exciting to get up close with these animals. You can see her little hatch going out there. That's a really comfortable gesture.
Tell us more about that patch. Oh, hello.
There's sort of a hatch on the edge in there. And you can see how it's kind of white. That's a characteristic that she shares in common with her North American cousins, the great horned owls. And they use it as a visual cue, as well as that auditory song here. So that is that cry that she's doing. That's a begging call. But it's just like a robin song, used for communication.
Yeah.
And they're
Contact call.
it's kind of the same way. It's a song of their people.
Where's Luna live? Where's Luna live?
Luna has winter back in the botanical garden, the nature center. Yep. They are, so apparently the thing with the largest animals here, she's the largest owl, largest falcon. And so you're not likely to see America unless it's in a setting like this.
What? Do you want this bit?
And females are also larger. Telling you earlier about sexual dimorphism in the raptor unit. Females are larger than males, and there's no coloration we're aware of in terms of their plumage. So really, I say that we're aware of because as I mentioned earlier, bird perceptions are very different than ours. So they have different light detecting cells in their eyes, and they can see different color spectrum. Definitely Zebra finches are one example that we know for sure. Color dimorphism that you and I can't see, but they're, similar species can see. Well, might be some plumage differences that you and I can't see in raptors, males and females, but the raptors can. Probably deer falcons
Yeah.
are studying.
How wide is her wingspan?
About 5.5. I don't wanna guess how much she weighs.
What'd you say?
Whoa, you got it.
Can't
believe that.
The local laws around here, are they truly nocturnal?
Not necessarily. It depends on the species, different, by different times of night. So these very large, like owls, like great horned owls are more muscular. They're more generalist, so they'll take a variety of prey throughout the day. So like right now, you would see great horned owls being very active. Whereas later on, you'll see things like barn owls, right? Those are a little bit more like truly nocturnal, obligate, dark, spotted owls. And then, these guys will also spend a lot of time hunting in the morning.
No respect for personal.
Where's the great alcohol and?
Great prey is more of a nocturnal one. You definitely see them hunting a lot during the day. Which is also a time that they will occupy.
Luna,
Visit burrowing owls are really common daytime hunters.
very nice and northern pygmy owls.
Yeah.
Did they have any conflicts with the other birds?
Like most years. You get some of that fun.
And the daytime and nighttime birds, and so these guys are what's known as apex predators. Nothing that preys on them regularly, except
know you
for
said that.
other birds.
Right,
So during the day, these birds are at a disadvantage. They're not built for speed and agility like the daytime birds. They're not out there actively pursuing prey. They generally kind of adopt like a wait and detect their prey and then sneak up on it. So their body style, their feather style is all very different. And so they're very vulnerable and during the daytime to hawks and eagles. But at night, these guys have the advantage. And so they will prey on hawks, eagles, other diurnal raptor species.
right.
See if she'll do.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Well, see if she'll do it.
Yeah. Yes.
Slippery floor.
Luna, pay attention to me.
So this is something about Eurasian eagle owls. They will actually spend more time on the ground than owls. Yeah. So I'm gonna, let's see, is her crate in here or do you want to crate her in here, Victoria?
That's my lap. That's not the glove. Can we start from the glove? The nice thing about having a lot of treasure or a job like this is not gonna. So that. All that's been said again.
Guess it's big eyes.
You wanna go back there?
You see, it was captive, first.
Yep, she has to New York.